My name is Scott, and I have always loved being around the water. A dream of mine was to one day own a lakefront property of my own. For years, my wife and I have driven around the state looking at property. Sometimes we were serious, and sometimes we just needed something to do, but we were always dreaming. Now the dream has become a reality. Come join us as we attempt to build our very own off-grid cabin on Lake Lot 9. Now that I have the subfloor down, I felt like this was a good milestone to take a step back, do a little bit of preview, let you guys know how I did what I did, why I made the decisions I made, and later on in the video let you know how much this has cost me so far. So I definitely overbuilt and overspent on this project so far, mainly because I know that I'm an inexperienced builder, and maybe I could hide some of my shortcomings by overbuilding the project. And also, one of the ways I was thinking about constructing this cabin is super heavy, and I wanted to make sure the foundation was really sturdy. If I decide not to go that route, at least I know that I have a sturdy foundation. So just know when we get to the price point of this project that you could probably get yourself to the same point for a fair amount less money than what I've spent so far. So the plan here is to build a 12 by 24 cabin on a pretty significant slope. I really didn't want to excavate the site and just kind of build on the site as is. So we started out putting up some batter boards, doing some basic measurements, and trying to get these corners straight. Working on the slope definitely raises the level of difficulty. But by keeping everything level and using the a squared plus b squared equals c squared method, we were able to get our four corners marked to what we felt like were really close. And now it was time to start digging. I figured if I got my four corners dug and poured, I could use those four corner posts to make sure everything else fell in line. What I would soon find out, between the tree roots and the rocks, I would need a spud bar, sawzall, and jackhammer, and a lot of time and hard work to get these holes dug. My original plan was to use 12-inch sonotubes to pour the footings, but then I decided that I needed these to be as big and wide as possible to make up for my inexperience, so I ended up just pouring the concrete directly in the ground. As you can see in this clip, I would just use 2x4s to frame up the top of the hole, so the hole would be round and the top form part would be square. I dug these holes 30 inches deep, which is about double the frost line in this area, and it turned into a process of bringing out a load of concrete, digging a hole, pouring a footer, maybe dig 2 holes one day, pour 2 footers the next day. There was just only so much concrete I could haul out at one time. I dug and poured a footer every 6 feet all the way around the perimeter of the building, for a total of 12 footings. I would estimate that each one of these holes I dug was around 18 inches across. I really didn't do any direct measuring. We picked up a small concrete mixer from Harbor Freight to reduce the labor a little bit. I used a generator and sometimes a Blue Eddy power bank to operate this concrete mixer and the jackhammer. I added vertical rebar to each footing, which probably didn't add a whole lot of extra stability, but I figure in this case I'm mainly worried about compression strength of the concrete, seeing as how it's all poured below grade anyway. All concrete used in this project was 4,000 pound PSI Quickcrete. Of course, when you get your first pour done, you've got to initial and date it, right? Once I found exactly where all 4 posts need to sit, which incidentally none of them hit the center of the footers that I poured, of course, I went ahead and put the 6 corner 6x6s in the post bases and got them all to stand up freely without mounting them. After doing this, I used a laser and set it really at no particular height. I just picked the height that looked right to me, and I turned it on, waited for the sun to go down enough so I could see the laser, and this way I could get all 4 of my corner posts cut off exactly not the same height, obviously, because we're on the slope, but they're all level with each other. Once I got this complete, I took all the corner posts back down, removed the post bases, and began the process of installing those 4 corner post bases. I chose to use Simpson Strong Tie ABU 66Z, and they are not cheap. In general, they're going to run you about right around $50 a piece. But these particular ones, you can use either 12 10D nails, 12 2.5 inch structural screws, which I use the Simpson ones to match up, or you can use 2 1/2-inch carriage bolts. Oddly enough, you get the most strength using the 12 screws or nails versus the 2 carriage bolts. So I went with the 2.5-inch screws. And these particular post bases will withstand a down force of 18,205 pounds and an uplift force of 2,475 pounds. Plus, they give you an inch offset between the bottom of your post and the concrete. I used a hammer drill with a 5/8 inch hammer drill bit, masonry bit. I think the drill bit was 8 inches long to drill my hole. I then mounted the bases using a 6-inch Simpson Titan concrete anchor. It was 6 inches long and 5/8 inch in diameter. I went with this over the wedge style anchors just because I felt like it was a little simpler and a little more forgiving, I thought. I've often been asked why I decided to surface mount my posts instead of putting them down in the hole with the concrete. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is I was not super sure of my ability to get everything square the first time. And once you put the post in the concrete, they're pretty much there. Secondly, I just feel like if for whatever reason one of these posts fail, which is unlikely, if it rots or splits or gets damaged in some way, I can take out a few fasteners and use a barn jack to support the cabin and literally change out one of these posts on my own probably in an hour. Once I got the 4 corner posts permanently set, the next few trips out were basically digging the rest of the footers, pouring concrete, and setting the rest of the post as the footers dried. I used 2 string lines to set the rest of the post. One string line ran across the top of the corner post to show where I needed to cut each post off at, and one ran across the back or the outside of the post to show exactly where the post needed to go. I did learn that the top string line was not exactly true. There's always a little bit of a swag in it. So there was a couple of posts I cut off a little bit short the first time. And finally, after several hard days' work, I managed to get that 12th and final footer dug and poured. All in all, just for these 12 footers, I poured 9,650 pounds of concrete, one 50-pound bag, mixed at a time, and packed up a hill in a 5-gallon bucket. Building off grid means you're in a constant battle with Mother Nature. There's no way you're going to win the war, but sometimes you can eke through a battle. On this fine day in May, the good old white oak fell across the road. Once we figured our way through that, it was time to mount all the remaining posts using the same Simpson brackets and the same fasteners. We had a spring slap full of torrential rain, which washed the road out pretty bad. So I decided to start using the boat to bring in materials from time to time to try to give the truck a little bit of a break. Now that all the posts are set, it's time to put that rim joist up. My original plan was to run a double rim joist. You'll see later on in the video that it ended up being triple just for good measure. But I wanted to put my rim joist directly on top of my post. I didn't want to do that much notching, and I didn't want to attach my rim joist to the edges of my post and rely solely on the strength of the fasteners. So my compromise by doing this is I had these pretty awesome 1/4-inch steel brackets custom made by a buddy of mine at his fab shop. He made me some corner brackets and some T-brackets for the other post. These brackets, along with 3-inch long 1/2-inch galvanized lag bolts and washers, should do the trick holding this rim joist on top of the post. Probably a little bit of overkill, but it made me feel better about it. And it turns out they actually look pretty good. I used a 5/16 inch drill bit to pre-drill all my holes for my 1/2-inch lag bolts. That ain't going nowhere. I originally connected the double rim joist together with 2.5-inch deck screws, but ultimately went back later and added some structural screws. I used 2 by 10 by 12 foot treated boards for this rim joist. On the 24-foot walls, I made sure there was only one break on top of each post. Here I'm just finishing up the first 2 layers of this rim joist, and on this particular day I was lucky enough to have my daughter along for a little extra company and help. Don't know about me, Lord. Wide. I don't know how good y'all can see that, but that's level. Now it's time for lateral bracing. I use treated 2x6s, sister 2 of them together, found the angles I needed, and I braced every single corner around the perimeter. I used 2.5-inch nails to sister the 2x6s together, and used 5-inch nails to fasten the lateral braces to the rim joist and the post. Of course, I had to make some smaller braces for the back. And this is the point where I decided to add a third layer to my rim joist and add some structural screws. This inside layer of 2x10s is the only untreated part so far in this project. Time for floor joist. I used untreated 2x10s. I installed the joist on 16-inch centers using joist hangers. I used 1.5-inch galvanized nails to install the hangers. I used the sawed off end of a 2x10 to align my hanger so that my joist would be level with my rim joist. Installing those hangers first definitely made it easier for me to put these joists in by myself. I was able to just cut them to length, slide them down the previous joist, and just drop them into place. And that leads us to the final day of this project up to this point. I decided to put down this Reflectix roll insulation before I put my subfloor down. This only provides like a 3.7 R rating, so you're not getting a ton of insulation out of it. But a lot of people believe that it deters rodents and bugs and whatnot from chewing through. I figured, why not? I'll give it a try. I bought rolls that were 4 feet wide and 25 feet long. So with 3 rows of this, covered everything perfectly with a foot left over on the far end. I put it down using this stapler, which was one of the most satisfying things I've done so far. I'd never used one of these before, but it worked flawlessly. With the cabin being a 12 by 24, 9 full sheets of subfloor should cover everything perfectly. I went with this Dry Max from Menards, which from the best I can understand is the equivalent to the Advantech that most people use. It's 3/4 inch tongue and groove, really heavy. The only thing I did special here, which is not really special, it's standard, is I put down a row of 3 sheets. Then the middle row I cut a sheet, and then 3 full sheets on the third row. That way all the seams are staggered, and that is supposed to help with structural integrity. I then used 3-inch ring shanked nails in my brand new nail gun that I'm awfully proud of. Feels solid. I don't hear any creaks or squeaks. So hopefully that little overview will kind of give you guys an idea, hit the high points of what I've done so far to get to this point, why and how I done it, and now I'm going to give you the rundown of the cost of it. I don't feel obligated to do that, but it seems like something that people enjoy knowing, and I don't have anything to hide, so here it is. Before I give you the number, you can see my fancy spreadsheet I keep here. I think I've already said this during this video, but I overspent on this project. And I'll explain, once I give you this number, I'll explain to you ways that I believe you could do it cheaper if you wanted to do what I did. And the number I'm going to give you is materials only. Of course, I did the labor myself, and I did buy a lot of tools. I'm not going to include the tools in this number because that's such a fluid subject. Some people have the tools, some people have part of the tools, some people have no tools. You can rent them, you can borrow them, whatever. But I don't mind telling you at some point what I spent on tools, but that's not going to be included in today's thing. So without running my mouth any longer, the total I've spent on materials to get to this point is $4,275.65. Is that exact? Probably not. It's easily within 5%. 5% would be a couple $100. You know, there's some fasteners and some screws and lag bolts and things like that that are left over that'll go on to the next part of the project. And I'm sure there's some stuff that slipped in on these receipts that I've bought for the house or whatever, and somehow forgot to omit. But I have been pretty diligent, so I would say that number is easily within 5% range. Now, places that I probably overspent mainly would be brackets. So the 12 Simpson 6x6 post bases, those are roughly $50 a piece. So I actually got it down here at $545, because if you do buy a 10-pack of them from Amazon, they are quite a bit cheaper. But so you're looking at $550-ish just for those 12 brackets or post bases. That's not including screws, fasteners, the anchors, none of that. That's just the base. And then these custom brackets that I had made to mount my rim joist to my posts. I spent more than this for them, but because I've got some for the porch. But for what I used here, those were $480. So basically, you could have saved $1,000 right out of the gate if you decided that you wanted to sink your post in the concrete and notch the top of them and put your rim joist around your post. That would have knocked out the need for all these brackets. So there's $1,000 right there out of the gate. I chose not to do that because I'm building on the slope. It makes me nervous. I'm inexperienced, and that's just the way I would decide to do it, and I don't regret one bit of it so far. And you have to admit, those black brackets look pretty daggone sharp. So there's $1,000 of it. I poured 9,650 pounds of concrete. So basically almost 5 tons of concrete in 50-pound bags. Here where I'm at, 50-pound bags of quick crease, $3.88 a bag plus tax, which comes up to $4.11-ish per bag. At 193 bags, it's a lot of concrete. That came up to be $793.77. And then the subfloor, $50 a sheet at 9 sheets, $450. There's $2,269 of the total cost right there. So everything else is lumber, joist hangers, nails, anchors for the post bases, screws. The list just goes on and on. But in case you missed that number, $4,275.65 plus or minus 5%. I'm comfortable with that. So that is about all I know to tell you guys up to this point. I just got done. You can tell I'm dirty as usual. I just finished pouring the footers for the other 2 footers for the porch post, and that's probably about going to do it for today. And I'm sure I missed some stuff. If I did, please feel free to ask me down in the comments. I really enjoy the comments, even the ones for the people who just want to fuss for no apparent reason. But yeah, I think that's about going to do it. I'm sure I'm missing something that I wanted to say, but anyway, I'm going to pack this stuff up and get out of here. And until you guys see me next week, find something you love to do and do it till it hurts.